If you are looking for a super fast quilt that makes great use of those big prints, then this is the quilt for you. You'll need 12 fat quarters and just 1 hour of your time. So this video is brought to you by my new quilt pattern, Aflutter. Now, if you would like to support my channel, then check out this quilt pattern. It is so much fun that I made 6 of them in a row. And if you like my video tutorials, there's also a workshop available for this quilt. And if you use the coupon code Aflutter, you can get it for both the quilt pattern and the tutorial for $15. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time for me to plug my new pattern. I hope you guys love it. And now we're gonna make a super fun, easy, quick pattern. The first thing we need to do is select fabric. Now I'm going to be pulling from my shelves of random fat quarters, and I want to do this in 2 different colors. So I'm going to choose 6 of one color and 6 of another color. And looking at my shelves, I really need to start making a dent in all of that low volume. So that is going to be one of my choices. And then we'll see what other color sparks my interest while I'm standing there. As I was rifling through my low volume fabrics, I looked over and saw this open bundle of Anna Maria Horner's new line. And it's gorgeous large prints, which is perfect for our super fast quilt today, since we're going to be working with very big blocks. So I have chosen 6 from the pinkish purplish end of the line, and then 6 of these very dark toned fabrics. This one might be a little bit questionable, but I'm just gonna roll with it. So now that I have chosen my gorgeous fabrics, I am going to give them a really good press to get rid of these harsh fold lines from being in a bundle. So I'm about 10 minutes into my super fast quilt, and I have all of my fat quarters pressed nicely. They're nice and flat, and over at my cutting table. And now it is time to square up those fat quarters. Fat quarters theoretically come at 18 by 21 inches, but every fabric is slightly different, and each fat quarter may not be totally square. So what we need to do is square them up so that each fat quarter is giving us the same size rectangle. Hopefully, you will be able to get an 18 by 21 inch rectangle out of each of your fat quarters, but choose your smallest one or stack them like I am here and get the biggest uniform rectangle you can. And if that is 17.5 by 20.5 or 17.5 by 20, it doesn't necessarily matter. They just all need to be uniform. And once you have them all squared up or rectangled up, I guess is a better term, then we are going to cut them on the diagonal, just once from corner to corner. So I have trimmed my fabrics and gotten them all ready, and we're at about 16.5 minutes right now. So we're making pretty good work of this quilt. I was not able to get the full 18 by 21 inches out of my fat quarters, so mine were trimmed to 21 by 17.5. And that's totally fine because they're all that size, so they will all work together. I cut all of my layers at once, so I was cutting through 6 layers of fabric each time. And if you are not comfortable cutting through that many layers, then that is totally fine. You can cut this 1 at a time, 2 at a time, whatever you're comfortable with. And it might just take a little bit more time. That's really the only benefit to cutting multiple layers at once, is that it just saves some time. To make it easier on yourself, using a really sharp new rotary blade will certainly help, and also using rulers that grip the fabric a little bit. When I was cutting these red fabrics, I used what I thought would be a better choice. It was a long, skinny ruler that gave me the length that I needed, but there weren't any of those grippy dots on the back like the Creative Grits rulers that I prefer have. So I had a little bit of slippage, but it was fine. I was able to realign my ruler and continue the cut. For these dark fabrics, I don't have a Creative Grits ruler that reached from corner to corner of this long rectangle. So I simply butted 2 rulers up against each other, and that gave me the length that I needed. And because those rulers have those not adhesive, they're grippy dots. Let's just call them grippy dots. The grippy dots on the back, it made that cut much easier, even though I was using 2 rulers. So lesson learned. You don't have to have like a 30-inch ruler. You can use 2 shorter ones. So I actually have 2 stacks of 6 of each of these fabrics here. You can see the red, and it goes through all of the same fabrics twice. And I have that for the red and the dark. Now we're going to be seaming these piles together along this long diagonal seam. And if we just sewed them together as they are stacked here, we would end up with the same 2 fabrics together twice. We would have this block, this red rose and pixelated gray, twice. And because there are so few fabrics in this quilt and so few blocks, I didn't want to have pairs of prints together twice. And that is why I chose to not do a 2 at a time method and instead work with triangles. So what we need to do is we need to shuffle one of our piles of 6. And I'm just going to grab a couple, it doesn't matter how many, and swap them. So now I will have this purple and this red together, and the next time this red is up for sewing, it will be sewed to this pixelated. And that will just give us a little bit more variety in our blocks, so that in our final quilt, it doesn't look like we did 2 at a time half rectangle triangles. You won't be able to see those repeated blocks. So now the only step left is to sew these blocks together. We are going to simply put them right sides together and sew that really long seam. Now these are bias seams. They're not starched really well. I gave them a little spritz of Best Press when I was pressing them just to get them flat, but these are fairly unstable long seams here. So take a little bit of care. Don't stretch these or put them under a lot of tension. Now the scale of these is pretty big, and we're almost at a square here. 17.5 by 20 isn't that far off from a square. So normally when you have a half rectangle triangle unit, you're going to have quite an offset of the tips. When you align this long edge, the tips won't necessarily line up exactly, but we're so close here that it's really close. So just do your best. You should have just a little bit of one fabric peeking out on one side and the corresponding little bit of overlap on the other side. But again, this is really close. At this scale, it's going to be really minor. Just line up the raw edges as best you can. Stick some pins in there if you would like to stabilize that raw edge, and chain piece these together. You can grab them just as they are here since they're already all shuffled and ready to sew. I am going to go ahead and chain piece through all 12 of these blocks, and we'll see you on the other side. So we are at 36 minutes and all of my blocks are done and pressed. Now I did not take the time to press my seam allowances open this time. It didn't seem worth it considering there's not going to be that many intersections in this quilt, and I just didn't want to today. You can be the boss of your own quilting. I'm trying to do this quickly, so I took that little shortcut for myself. I am ready to assemble this into a quilt top, so please excuse the crudity of this drawing. But here's our layout. It is 3 blocks by 4 rows. It's super easy, and all of the rows are actually the same. They're just rotated. So this row is just this row upside down. So I'm not going to take the time to lay out my quilt. I'm just going to sew it from the blocks as they are sitting here next to me. If you would like to take the time to lay yours out so that you can distribute any fabrics that you want to have in special places, then go for it. I am going to sew all my rows, and then I might shuffle my rows a little bit and rearrange them from the rows rather than the blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we are going to be sewing this top block to the block underneath it, just like this. So the pink triangles are going to be touching our dark triangles. And we will sew 3 of them together like that to make our row. And then we'll repeat that 3 more times. So we are about 53 minutes in now, and my blocks are all sewn into rows, and I spent some time laying those rows out and shuffling them on the floor behind me. Now, I did end up swapping out a different arrangement from the drawing that I showed you. I didn't rotate the rows like I showed in the drawing. All of the rows are arranged the same. So all of the blocks have the pink on the upper left and the dark on the lower right. Now, I did this because there wasn't that much difference in some of the colors in these these fabrics that I chose. They're all from the same line. They're all really big prints, so they blend together really well. If you were doing this from a stack of navy blue fat quarters and white fat quarters, then you would probably get that checkerboardy type look from the drawing that I showed you in a much stronger way than I was. So you can arrange them like this or like this. It is completely up to you. All you need to do is just rotate 2 of your rows to swap between them. So lay them out and decide which way you like best. Now my rows are ready to sew together into my final top. I just have 3 more seams to go, and I think we're going to finish this in under an hour. So I'm going to get sewing and I'll show you the finished top. 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 22 seconds. Not quite an hour, but really close. And I have a finished top. Is this top going to win any awards? No. Is it absolute piecing perfection? No. But this quilt would be great for instant gratification if you wanted to teach someone how to quilt and you needed a pretty easy, concise project that you could fit into an afternoon, or if you just have a line of fabric or a couple of fabrics that have really great big prints that you want to show off instead of cutting up into tiny pieces. I had a ton of fun and I hope you guys did too. If you like videos like this, like a quick, fast, easy gratification project, I do have a couple of other quilts that are popping up on the screen right now that I made in a day. Until next time, happy quilting!